Well, welcome everyone to this MS365Con focus session sponsored by Exclaimer. For 20 years, Exclaimer has been the recognized global market leader in on-premises and cloud-based email signature software and solutions for Microsoft 365, Microsoft Exchange, and Google Workspace. Exclaimer solutions enable companies to manage their employees' email signatures efficiently and deliver consistent branding, promotions, disclaimers, and compliance statements, while substantially cutting admin overhead. Exclaimer has been the recipient of multiple industry awards over the years and was the first company of its type to successfully achieve the ISO IEC certification for its cloud-based signature management service. I'll be the moderator for today's focus session. My name is Roger, and I have a few quick housekeeping items to cover. We encourage you to use the questions panel to submit any questions or comments you have during the presentation. You can submit your questions at any time, and we will be collecting those, and we'll try to address as many of them as possible. Any questions that our speakers are not able to get to before the session concludes will be forwarded to them so that they can follow up with you by email. Our speaker for this session is James Wayne. James is the head of product specialist at Exclaimer and has helped hundreds of organizations realize their ideal email signature management aims. James is an expert on the management of corporate email signatures, understanding the inherent value associated with getting them right and ensuring organizations are making the most out of this underused communications channel. Well, welcome, James, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Roger, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining me as I aim to explore today with you the challenges inherent to managing email signatures, how you might go about resolving those once and for all, perhaps with the help of an Exclaimer solution. The agenda that I have prepared for today looks something like this. I first intend to really explore the value inherent to enforcing an email signature policy, why really you should be concerned with managing email signatures in the first place. I'll move on to then exploring some of the common obstacles we encounter organizations dealing with when it comes to email signature management. What you might be able to do to address some of those obstacles, perhaps again with one of the Exclaimer solutions. That will lead very swiftly into an introduction to our latest email signature management tool, Exclaimer Cloud, that can be used with Exchange Online, Exchange, or Google Workspace. We'll discuss how that solution integrates with your IT infrastructure. I then intend to spend a little while inside the solution itself, giving a live demonstration. That'll give me just enough time, I hope, to summarize what I've been able to discuss and take some questions at the end. So let's get started. And let's start with that all-important question. What really is the value of enforcing an email signature policy? Well, we've seen over the 20 years we've been specialists in this space a number of reasons why getting a really strong email signature policy in place will bring benefits to your organization. But I want to talk about three really crucial ones to begin with. The first is branding consistency. And this is something we actually encounter being the real start for looking at an email signature policy. You are concerned that your email signatures aren't really giving the best impression. You're not reaching a uniform branding on all of the corporate email, and therefore you're failing to build trust and engagement with your brand. Well, by creating an email signature policy and then enforcing it, you resolve that issue. No longer is there any opportunity for emails to leave without that consistency of branding. But then what we typically see is organizations want to make use of the email signature now it is consistent. All of a sudden, it represents a communications channel the organization can benefit from. And they can employ this communications channel to improve core metrics, whether that be their sales, customer or client engagement, or just generally satisfaction, be that customers or staff. And finally, organizations can ensure compliance with an email signature. That might be as simple as an email disclaimer, but it could also be qualifying users or components of the organization in the ways that they must be. And that's, of course, very specific to the industry that you work in. But we have seen multiple examples in different industries of needing to do that. And we've helped organizations who have faced those challenges to succeed there. There are innumerable risks associated with a lack of conformity, but it is also true how easy it is to struggle to enforce an email signature policy even once you have conceived it. People attempt to use transport rules, perhaps, to get this signature into place, or they rely on users. And always there are challenges inherent there. Typically, mail flow rules come with compromises. Typically, trusting your users never really reaches the standardization that you would expect. And if you can't get this state of conformity, it's also highly unlikely you're going to be able to make use of the email signature as a communications channel. And this is something at Exclaimer we're great fans of. This is where we see our customers having the greatest success. Once they've actually got the conformity they first desired, they evolve the email signature to work for them. With an email signature, we can, of course, be very targeted. We can target specific audiences and control the context in which a signature appears, and thus target the content of the email signature to be very, very effective. And we're doing this, importantly, at a high volume. We can reach a substantial audience with an email signature, really regardless of our business's size. In fact, this is a channel that will scale very closely with the size of organization. We add in new users, they will have an email address, they will send emails. They are now extra emails that have that email signature attached. And as well, we can be sure of a continuous display of this content with it associated with emails that have come from a personal and trusted source and attached to meaningful and valued content. So it's far more likely that this communication at scale that we're talking about also makes a better impression. Here at Exclaimer, we have actually created a Dummies guide to email signatures, and I would very much suggest giving that a read if you're interested in what an email signature can be utilized for. We explore in that book really what we see being the untapped potential of email signatures these days. We'll give realistic examples of what you could add and the effect you can benefit from. We call these components our 7 C's of signature design. Adding contact details, of course, but also communication, compliance, certification, conformity to branding, collecting feedback through surveying, and connecting people to your social media channels. So you've got a policy, or at least the beginnings of one. How do you go about actually putting that policy into place? Well, we could scrap that policy. We could think, is it worth the hassle? And let things continue perhaps as they always have. A state of anarchy, in effect, with users left to dictate the integrity of their email branding. There'll be no consistency and signatures will become unmanageable. And certainly that might be one less headache for you to contend with. But sooner or later, somebody is going to run afoul of something. There's going to be an email that isn't compliant in the way it needs to be, or your email is untrusted because it doesn't look the same it always has, Or perhaps somebody from marketing or communications will ask of you to use the signature in some way that's impossible to realize. So then you will start to look at ways to deploy the signature, perhaps, and you'll turn to the native functionality available to you. Perhaps you'll try and use the Outlook client. And the only ways to do that then is for you to visit each machine, either remotely or physically desk to desk, or actually to trust end users themselves to copy and paste templates or follow instructions where it is necessary. Well, unfortunately, that's either a lot of tedious effort that is associated with the IT function of your business, or again, we're reliant on users who probably, even potentially not intentionally, will result in different signatures as a result. That is unfortunately quite often the case in our experience. And when you do want to make use of the email signature as a communications channel, having users be in charge of making edits removes any potential for agility. It only takes a user being on holiday or disregarding an email where routine updates suddenly mean that conformity you were aspiring to is immediately lost. So perhaps we turn to our Exchange transport rules. Well, now, again, we're entirely reliant on changes by the IT team, and any changes that are required by marketing have to go through them. Certainly then we're back to a procedure of change request after change request to make meaningful changes to signatures. It becomes quite challenging to make use of the signature as a communications channel in those instances. And also it tends to mean compromises. Compromises about where that signature ends up. Unfortunately, it's quite often the case that signature will end up at the very bottom of the email communication. Compromises about how we make use of Active Directory detail. If we have detail that is missing, it might affect the email signature design in some negative way. So there are definitely challenges in all of the ways inherent without a bespoke tool. That is where Exclaimer Cloud can offer value here. If you want to manage email signatures for your organization and do that hassle-free, Exclaimer Cloud is truly perfect. And I'll explain why. For a start, we aren't reliant on end users at all. We'll be delivering or applying signatures automatically from a centralized position. But we are still able to give access to marketing to let them manage email signatures. And that's not going to mean giving them access to Exchange Online, to Exchange, to Google Workspace. We can actually do that in a very secure way. And all of those compromises we're trying to avoid, we will avoid, all the whilst ensuring signature application across all devices. So we are reaching 100% conformity of email signature, and we can do so really easily. So let's talk a little bit more about Exclaimer Cloud. Exclaimer Cloud truly unlocks some very important opportunity and resolves some very common issues. When it comes to the issue of conformity, as I've mentioned, we're going to make sure your email signatures end up on your emails 100% of the time, always conforming to the brand guidelines of your business. It's going to ensure consistency on every email sent, regardless of the device and client that your end user elects to use. But also importantly, we're going to make this more comfortable than it's ever been. We make deploying email signatures quick and time efficient with Exclaimer Cloud. There is an online portal, a truly collaborative space, in fact, where everyone you assign access can go and work together to realize the intended result, to reach a point where email signatures you want to deploy can be deployed and managed, importantly, by the people who have the most to gain through managing them. We truly aim to make that process so simple and straightforward that anyone can be invited to take part. And from a compliance perspective, we make sure that emails sent comply with global regulations, but as well other regulations that might affect your particular industry. So then in terms of opportunity, well, now we can make it possible to invite non-IT team members to get directly involved in signature management, give easy access to them. So perhaps this is the marketing team, perhaps this is the communications team, perhaps this is HR, customer experience, these parts of the organization who have the most to gain by using the email signature in some way. And we do this all the whilst ensuring efficiency by not having more than one person touch the same task. We'll avoid that queue of change requests that might otherwise take place. And important to us is the ability to transform the email signature into another channel of communication. Add content that is meaningful there, that can really maximize the return you can expect from managing signatures in a meaningful way. So just before I start to talk about how this is all accomplished, I just want to turn your attention to us, to Exclaimer, just for a moment. As Roger explained at the top of the call, we really are the market or category leader in email signature management solutions. And we've reached this pinnacle largely by approaching customers in a uniquely Exclaimer way. We work with them to ensure they always succeed with the solutions that we offer. We make it our business to help onboard every customer and take into consideration what they look to achieve. We've got enough experience in this space to understand what new technology and features can be added to our product to make email signature management easier and more effective. And you'll find our solution, I hope, very feature rich. We're at a stage now where we can boast 40,000 customers worldwide. And that ranges from small to medium business all the way up to extremely large enterprise level organizations. And customers choose us not only because of the quality of our solutions, but as well, they see the experience of our existing customers, advocates who are very happy to share their experience and share what they've been able to retrieve from using our solutions. And as I said, we make it our business to assist every evaluating customer. We understand our responsibility as a vendor, not just to deliver on a solution, but also to deliver a return on investment. We truly do believe that with our solution, any customer who wants to be more effective with their email signature management can be successful. And finally, Exclaimer has now been around for 20 years. And all I want to point out here is just how much experience that means we've been able to accrue. We've kind of seen it all now when it comes to email signatures. We've seen very unique use cases to just generally common practices with email signatures and how they can really be utilized. And we're quite happy to share that with our customers. We do really think it our business to ensure that you can get the most out of these signatures with our product. And so to showcase that, I just want to talk about a quick case study. And the case study I've selected is that of the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts had a very familiar problem. They were manually implementing their email signatures, and that included the campaign banners and logos that they were using. And really, that resulted in a situation where there was really no consistency across signatures at any stage. They had outdated signatures in place or signatures without this information, largely because they were reliant on users putting these changes into effect. It made it basically impossible to run promotional banner advertisements in their signatures. That is when Ryan Fannin, Director of Football Information Systems, got in touch with Exclaimer. And we worked with Ryan to implement our Office 365, Microsoft 365 solution, Exclaimer Cloud. We replicated all of the Indianapolis Colts signatures into templates and implemented alongside Ryan these signatures and the Exclaimer Cloud solution and tested what we had built to make sure it was exactly as was required. And the results of this in a very short amount of time is now the Indianapolis Colts have exactly as they sought. Consistent branded email signatures for all of their staff, and importantly, the ability to run dedicated campaigns for their different departments at a push of a button. So hopefully you're now aware of the value of this solution. So let's talk a little bit about some technical details. And let's start with our first point of integration, and that is with Azure Active Directory. We use the Graph API to connect here. That means all we need to do is put some very basic permissions into place in the form of an enterprise application in your Azure tenant to reach the Active Directory details we will utilize to assign signatures and, importantly, fill those signatures in with user details. It's worth mentioning that if you intend to integrate with Exchange, we can also integrate with local Active Directories just by means of AD Connect. Or if you want to use custom attributes and don't have a local Active Directory, we use the 15 custom attributes that you find in Exchange Online instead. For Google Workspace users, we integrate with the Google directory in place of Active Directory. And this is handled in a similar way with an application that is integrated into that tenant. If we skip over now the process of signature design and signature rule building, we need to discuss how signatures actually get deployed. With Exclaimer Cloud, there are two ways of doing this. One way we call client-side configuration, the other server-side configuration. Client-side is the integration with the email client, be that Outlook or perhaps, in this case of Google Workspace, Gmail. Whereas server-side is integration with the mail flow itself. Integration with Exchange Online, Exchange on-premise, or the Gmail service. So for client-side, all we need to configure is a way of delivering email signatures. We do this perhaps in the form of an agent where Outlook is concerned, or again with an application in Google Workspace where Gmail is concerned. Then, through use of that integration, we can allow organizations to assign an email signature and have that email signature automatically delivered to users in their email client. The alternative is to use the server-side configuration. And this has almost exactly the opposite effect of client-side. Where client-side, we are delivering the email signature, we are affording users a very traditional end-user experience where they can see that email signature, they can select that email signature. Server-side takes all of that fuss away. Now, with server-side, we're not reliant on some agent on the client machine. We're doing this all at the server level, which also means this process is entirely agnostic. Agnostic to where the email is composed. We don't have to do that in Outlook. We don't have to do that in Gmail. We can do that process on our mobile phone, our tablet, our CRM system, and still get the same result. It is server-side that guarantees true email signature conformity. We do this by introducing a smart host into your mail route. A user can send an email from one of those devices that they use. That email will go through to the email service, be it Exchange Online in Microsoft 365, Exchange on-premise, or perhaps the Gmail service, where then the emails get routed through to Azure-hosted Exclaimer Cloud. either in US data centers, if you are a US-based company, or Canadian data centers, if you're a Canadian-based company. And that is where signature application takes place. And we obey the reply separators of that message, which means the email signature does get added in the right space, and simply return the email back to the email service so it can be sent on to the recipient from there. The great news is that you can use both of these deployment methods at the same time. If you have both client-side and server-side enabled, we are always checking for the presence of a client-side signature, deduplicating, and only actually applying a signature if we find one not to be present. In this way, you're able to serve your users a very traditional experience in the clients where that is allowed, permitted, but also cover those devices that are a little bit more unique: mobile phones, tablets, CRM systems. And we host this all in Azure. This is where Active Directory or Google Directory details are synchronized, so we can make use of them. It's also where the smart host is that will imprint signatures via server-side. When it comes to the resilience of the solution, its reliability, well, we can assure a 99.9% uptime guarantee, whilst also assuring that your data will never leave your region. In terms of security, well, we make sure that we're following best practices here. We use unique SSL certificates for every customer, and that is used to enable 256-bit encryption on every email, both at rest and in transit. And finally, we do really make sure to maintain the privacy of your email service. We have that ISO certification to prove this, a certification we remain audited for by a third party. And the best way we have found to meet this regulation is to treat emails in our RAM space, apply the signature there, and never have means to store those emails permanently on disk. So with that, let's take a brief look at the Exclaimer Cloud Portal. And to do that, I'm just going to switch over here to my web browser. This is where the day-to-day work of email signature management is handled. And it immediately allows you to give access to other individuals in the business. They can sign in with their Google account, their Microsoft account, or as I am doing here, with an email address and password they have established. When they sign in, they will have access to your subscription, but perhaps not all of it. And I'll show you what I mean. By launching into this demo environment, you'll see how I've separated my subscription into different folders for different parts of the organization. I've got a folder for my sales team, my marketing team, my IT team. And it means I can be very selective with folder security over which users I've granted access to the subscription have access to which folder. So I can have people who just handle the sales team, for example, and I can have people that just manage the marketing team, and they are kept entirely separate. Taken to an extreme, I could even have a non-production folder where I store effectively the designs that non-IT proficient users design, and then move them into production folders when it comes time for me to deploy them. And this prevents users perhaps making changes to the signature policies that I'm looking to obey. If we take a look inside a folder, you'll see how I've got some pretty common use cases in our experience. I've got a main signature I'll look to apply for most of the year, but I've also got a competing Christmas signature that I'll apply just for that period of time around Christmas. These are very similar setup signatures, bar some content within, and all I've done is I've applied a date range to the Christmas signature so that it may take priority from the main signature for the month I intend to use it. I also have a forwards and reply signature. So this signature I do intend to use after one of these main signatures has been applied, therefore condensing the amount of content I'm adding to each email. And all of this top row, I'm actually only looking to apply when I send externally, doing this via recipient-based rules. So here, see these signatures apply externally, whereas my internal one only applies internally. All of this is optional, however. Applying a signature can be as simple as assigning it to the senders within your organization who are going to make use of that signature. And here you can see multiple ways in which I can do this. I can do this choosing everyone in the organization, perhaps individuals, specific users or email addresses, specific AD groups like the sales team, and queried groups that I find based on Active Directory. And with that done, all that I have to do as well is decide how I apply the signature, whether I use server-side, client-side, or both. And then all I just briefly want to show you is how easy it would be for your designers to design a signature. And this designer is built to be as intuitive as it could ever be. It's entirely drag and drop. So removing components is as easy and simple as dragging them out of the design, and the reverse is true as well. Adding a component is as simple as locating the component we want to add from the left-hand side here and dragging it into place, like so. That is the case with any component you look to add, by the way. Not just the images, the banners, and the logos, but also all of our text, be it static, like our disclaimer, and as well Active Directory or Google Directory information in the form of placeholders. We can then do granular edits like editing the font that we're using font stacks, or even uploading fonts, the colors, the spacing in the form of padding, and very usefully, setting up conditions for when certain components show. And a great example of this is here with this mobile number. We're saying visible only when our mobile number is not empty. So that's our tool. Very intuitive to use. It takes very little experience to get quite accustomed to working with this solution to manage signatures. And we really truly believe it's something that anyone can be successful with. So now that I've shown you all of that, how can you contact us? Well, we would actually very much promote starting a 14-day trial, which we do offer for this solution. You can make use of the solution as if a paying customer for free for 14 days. If, however, you'd like to see more, well, you can request a demonstration. And if you want to see some pricing, we can make that available too. All you need to do is get in touch with us. And you can do so in one of these ways. Contacting us at sales@exclaimer.com, calling to one of our many global offices, or reaching out to us via live chat on our website. And with that, I will say thank you very much for your attention, and I will move to answer some of the questions that have been asked as we've gone along today.
Well, thank you, James. We do have a number of questions that I will jump right into. The first one is, with your solution needing integration with my mail flow, what would happen should the service go down?
That is a fantastic question. And the important thing to first point out is how reliable a service Exclaimer Cloud truly is. We have that 99.9% uptime guarantee because of the way we host the solution. We have that active setup where we have the 2 Azure data centers in the region hosting your subscription, so we can provide automatic failover. The good news as well here is that Should you not wish to use server-side for any reason, you don't have to. It is up to you to configure whether you want to use client-side or server-side or both. If you choose to use server-side, however, have confidence that many customers in many verticals, in many industries, use of that service too. And we're monitoring it around the clock. Something very important to us is that if something were to occur, we could get notice to customers very quickly. And it would be as simple as disabling the transport rule that triggers the send connector, that triggers the messages to route through to the Exclaimer Smart Host.
The next question is interesting. I don't think this individual has a lot of faith in their marketing team, but no worries. We are not going to be disclosing any names here. So the question is, I'm worried that if I give my marketing team access, they'll only mess things up. How can I be confident that giving them access to manage email signatures poses no risk?
Yeah, I wish that was the first time I've heard something along those lines, but it's not. Certainly, there can be some apprehension here when this responsibility has largely lived with IT, perhaps, or maybe the marketing team, doesn't have the greatest proficiency with IT systems. It can be definitely a challenge to consider how they might interact with a service like this and what trouble they could cause. The good news here is you can be so very selective on what access they have. And as I said, we've got some very large enterprise organizations who make use of non-production folders to give their marketing team access. So they can come in and they can create the designs for sure. But then when it comes to actually signature application, well, then that is handled still entirely by the IT team. That would be something you could decide. But what is also very true is that when you give users access, you can select a role for them. Are they an admin or are they an editor? And it's only admins that can really affect how the solution integrates with Exchange Online, Google Workspace, or Exchange On-Premise.
All right, we just have time for a couple more. The next one is, can you speak a little more about using, or the advantages of using both the Outlook integration as well as the Exchange Online integration?
Certainly. So that, I think, really is dependent on the end user experience you are trying to provide. If you use client side, it is because you want users to see that signature as they compose and perhaps even be able to select which signature they want to use. Really important if you've got users who have perhaps different job titles and they switch hats during their working day. Perhaps you have shared mailboxes that you're actually using to send messages from. Client side can be really beneficial there. But it's server side, of course, that allows you to reach conformity everywhere. It's only server side that's going to be able to apply a signature on mobile devices and tablets. And that is why most of our customers will use both deployment methods.
And this will have to be our last question, and it's an interesting one. I've heard the news that you guys acquired Customer Thermometer. What does that mean for customers of this solution?
Yes, indeed, that's news somewhat hot off the press. Exclaimer has now welcomed Customer Thermometer into the Exclaimer family. Customer Thermometer have been an organization providing organizations a means to add one-click surveys into various communications channels, email signatures being just one of them. We now actually have, through our acquisition of that organization, a new way of integrating customer surveys into your email signatures. And it's another great way you can make use of an email signature as a communications channel. That does have some extra associated cost, unfortunately. It's not something we can offer as part of the standard Exclaimer Cloud price, but we can offer a very good rate on a bundle of the pair. And that's a great way of, if you want to really get in touch with how your organization is affecting your customer, client, or even staff experience, you can get some meaningful reporting, real-time alerts from that solution.
Well, we will have to wrap it up with that because our next focus session will be starting soon. So on behalf of TechGenics, I want to thank you, James, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We hope you found today's event informative for both you and your organization. The next session, as I mentioned, will start very soon, and the link to join that session is included in your email confirmation. And it's also available at the Twitter hashtag MS365Con in case you don't have your confirmation handy. That's hashtag MS365Con. This concludes this focus session. Thank you again for attending. You may now disconnect, and we hope to see you again very shortly.